At my cousin's engagement party, I was told, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You're not family anymore." No warning, no explanation, just a cold dismissal served with champagne and applause. I'd spent my entire life caring for that family. I raised their daughter. I rebuilt their home. And yet, they erased me like I never existed. But that night, someone slipped me a manila envelope. Inside it, a truth so brutal it made the betrayal look small. I didn't get even. I got everything. Before I continue my story, where are you watching from? Hit that like and subscribe button. If this hit you, trust me, you'll want to hear how this unfolds. When my Aunt Regina raised her glass and announced to the party, "Carmen won't be living with us anymore. She's no longer part of the family." No one flinched, not even my goddaughter, who I'd helped raise since she was in diapers. I was standing right there, holding a tray of fresh tamales I'd spent 5 hours making, and not a single person made eye contact. The applause was polite, the smiles tight. Regina clinked her champagne flute against her husband's, then looped an arm around their daughter like I hadn't just been gutted in public. I didn't ask questions. I didn't cry. I placed the tray on the table and walked out through the side gate. No coat. No goodbyes. My phone buzzed once. A text from Regina. "You'll have 3 days to collect your things. We've changed the lock starting Monday." That house, the one I helped restore after a flood, the one where I tiled the bathroom floor myself, where I cared for Regina after her surgery, where I gave up my college acceptance to stay and hold that family together, it was no longer mine. I walked to the curb in my worn flats, trembling but upright, and waited for a ride like I hadn't just been publicly erased. It was raining. Of course it was. I pulled my sweater tighter, and that's when I noticed someone was watching me. Across the street, under the awning of a shuttered panaderia, stood a man in a navy jacket. I squinted. He stepped forward. "Carmen Reyes?" he asked. I nodded cautiously. He looked older than I remembered, face leaner, but the eyes hadn't changed. "Ezra?" I said. He smiled faintly. "I thought it might be you. Someone tipped me off you'd be here tonight." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "This belongs to you. I've been holding it since your quinceañera. I wasn't sure when, or if, I should give it to you. But I think it's time." I didn't take it right away. I stared at it like it might bite me. The last time I saw Ezra, we were both 16, and he was being dragged out of our house after standing up to my uncle during a fight no one ever talked about again. "You were right about them," I whispered. He didn't gloat. He just nodded and handed me the envelope. "Don't open it here. Read it somewhere quiet. And when you're ready, call me. We'll burn the whole thing down the smart way." Then he disappeared back into the dark, leaving me holding the one thing that could finally explain why I'd never felt like I belonged. And maybe, just maybe, give me the power to rewrite everything. Aunt Regina used to tell people she rescued me after my parents died in a fire. That was the story, told with tears in her eyes, always at church fundraisers or PTA meetings, always with her hand resting dramatically on my shoulder like I was some stray miracle she decided to keep. But I remembered no fire, no ashes, just a long ride in a gray van, a cold juice box, and a woman who smelled like peppermint telling me not to ask questions. Regina never legally adopted me. I only found that out years later when a college FAFSA flagged my documents as inconsistent. She said it was a glitch. I believed her. Because I had to. I didn't have anyone else. By the time I was 10, I was making dinner 3 nights a week. At 12, I was walking her daughter, Paloma, to school and back every day, even if I missed tutoring. At 15, I gave up my full scholarship to Rice University because Regina was going through something, and someone had to keep the house running. That someone was always me. I knew how she liked her coffee, 2 sugars, splash of almond milk, and how to reset the router when it froze on her soap operas. I learned how to hold silence like armor when relatives asked, "So where are you really from, Carmen?" And Regina would jump in with, "She's ours. That's all that matters." Except it wasn't. Not when it came to bank accounts or health proxies or the deed to the house that I helped restore brick by brick. That belonged to Paloma. I found that out the day I took Regina to the notary and saw her whisper something to the clerk. Suddenly, the paperwork changed. Suddenly, I wasn't on record. The same week I got bronchitis from repairing the back porch during hurricane season. I remember Regina patting my hand and saying, "We just need to simplify things. You're not going anywhere." And like a fool, I stayed. Because when you've been programmed to be grateful for scraps, you forget you deserve anything whole. I was the silent scaffolding holding up their lives, and I was crumbling. Looking back, I realized Paloma's silence wasn't cluelessness. It was complicity. She let me iron her graduation sash while Regina signed the house into her name. She called me her sister, but only when it made her look generous. I wasn't family. I was the help with memories. And that envelope in my purse? It was the first real thing that ever belonged to me. I didn't open the envelope that night. I kept it sealed under my pillow like some cursed relic, terrified that whatever was inside might confirm what I already suspected: that I was never meant to be part of that house. It wasn't until the third night, in a borrowed room above a florist shop where I'd crashed on a friend's couch, that I finally unsealed it. Inside were 3 documents: a forged birth certificate listing Regina as my mother, a notarized letter with a forged signature transferring custodial rights, and a grainy photo of me as a toddler, sitting beside a woman I didn't recognize, but whose eyes mirrored mine like 2 matching keys in a forgotten lockbox. At the bottom of the envelope was a sticky note in Ezra's handwriting. "You were taken, Carmen. Start with the name Delilah Ruiz, El Paso. She's looking for you." I don't remember breathing. I just remember cold rushing through my limbs as if the floor had dropped beneath me. I tried to stand, couldn't. My legs folded and I landed hard on the mattress, clutching the photo like it could answer me. My whole life, I'd clung to the lie because it was all I had. But this wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. Identity theft. Family theft. I opened my laptop with shaking fingers. Ezra had also included a phone number and a link to a secured Google Drive folder. Inside were photos, documents, even an audio recording from a court clerk in Hidalgo County explaining how certain guardianship files had quietly disappeared 20 years ago, at the request of a local attorney who'd since lost his license. That attorney, former business partner of my uncle. The implications sank in like lead. Regina hadn't just manipulated the system. She had used me, fabricated an entire identity, mine, to qualify for property tax exemptions tied to guardianship, to get access to federal aid, to stake claim over the estate of a dead relative I never even knew. And every time she called me strong, independent, family, it had been a cover. A performance. She'd erased my history to write her own. I stared at the name, Delilah Ruiz, then at the photo. The woman had soft cheeks, deep-set eyes, and a look that felt both foreign and terrifyingly familiar. If I was right, if Ezra was right, that meant I hadn't been rescued. I'd been rewritten. And now the truth was sitting in my inbox, waiting for me to decide what kind of story I wanted to tell next. I clicked on Ezra's number. He picked up on the first ring. "Ready to burn it down?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "Let's start with her name. Ezra met me the next morning at a diner on the outskirts of town, the kind where the coffee tastes like burnt hope and the waitresses call you sugar even when you're breaking apart. He slid a laptop across the table and opened a document labeled Timeline CR. The file was meticulous. Dates, scanned forms, property records, screenshots of social media posts, even phone logs, all mapped to build the truth of who I was and what Regina had done to bury it. "You weren't just stolen, Carmen," Ezra said quietly. "You were rebranded. They laundered your identity like it was dirty money." I skimmed through it all. Birth record applications filed out of order, signatures that didn't match, medical forms with conflicting guardianship listings. Then I saw the email thread. Regina messaging a man named Saul Mendez, flagged as a property attorney, asking how to convert custodial care into joint inheritance rights under Texas homestead protections. The timestamp was 2 days before my high school graduation, the same week I'd found the deed missing my name. I felt bile rise in my throat. Ezra clicked to another folder titled Ruiz Family. There she was, Delilah, a chef. Owned a small restaurant called Casa Alma in El Paso. Local articles quoted her as a community matriarch, someone who hosted Sunday meals for low-income kids and ran food drives during the pandemic. And in one photo, there she stood, holding a ladle and smiling beside a faded, missing child poster stapled to the bulletin board behind her. My photo. Except the name printed beneath wasn't Carmen Reyes. It was Catalina Ruiz. "She never stopped looking," Ezra said. "This flyer is from just 2 years ago." I leaned back, dizzy with it all. 25 years of my life. A lie. A borrowed name. A stolen history. All because a woman I called aunt decided she was entitled to something that wasn't hers. I asked Ezra how far this could go, what was even possible legally. "Well," he said, "if we can prove fraud, you're not just a victim of identity theft. You're the rightful heir to a contested estate, and possibly the recipient of backdated federal compensation. But first, we need the original missing persons report." He already had a plan. We drove 6 hours to El Paso, no radio, just the quiet hum of possibility. Casa Alma was closed when we arrived, but the lights were on inside. I knocked once. A woman answered. She looked older than the photo, but unmistakably the same. She stared at me like I was a ghost, then dropped the dish towel she was holding. "Catalina?" she whispered. I didn't know how to answer. My voice broke. "Delilah?" She nodded slowly, hand trembling as it rose to cover her mouth. She didn't cry. She just stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, tight like a memory trying to hold itself together. We sat in her kitchen for hours. She showed me boxes of flyers, old notebooks, photos of me as a toddler, real ones, no duplication, no Photoshop, just blurry joy and messy pigtails. She told me everything, how I vanished under a babysitter's watch, how no police ever called back, how her immigration paperwork was denied after my disappearance, how Regina had been a distant cousin who offered help, then disappeared herself. She'd suspected, but could never prove it. Until now. Ezra recorded everything. The photo of the bulletin board, the notarized letter, the voice message from Delilah breaking down the timeline. It was enough. We filed the report with the Texas State Attorney's Office the next day. Fraud, false documents, concealment of a child. Real names were attached now. Real consequences in motion. And in that moment, I realized revenge wasn't about anger. It was about evidence. And I was finally holding the receipts. The courtroom didn't look like justice. It looked like old carpet, flickering fluorescents, and a bailiff who chewed gum too loudly. But for the first time in my life, I had a seat at the table, with my real name on the docket, Catalina Ruiz versus Regina Salazar. Regina walked in wearing pearls like armor, her lawyer flanking her like she was the wronged party. Paloma trailed behind, eyes hollow. No one looked at me. Ezra sat beside me, calm as ever, with 2 briefcases full of documentation. Delilah was behind me in the gallery, her hand clutching a photo of me as a toddler. The judge called the case. And for the next 2 hours, I watched my old life get dissected under oath. We presented the forged birth certificate first, then the mismatched Social Security filings, then the real estate documents with altered notary stamps. Finally, the testimony. Delilah's voice was steady when she described the day I disappeared, how no reports were filed from Regina's address, how she'd been blocked on every channel when she tried to reach out. Ezra played the court clerk's audio, how Regina's lawyer had adjusted custody paperwork with falsified statements. I thought I would feel triumph. I didn't. I felt stripped. Like I had to stand there naked while my stolen childhood was pinned to a corkboard for everyone to examine. Regina's defense was thin. We acted in the child's best interest. We gave her a good life. But her voice cracked when the judge asked, "Then why the need to falsify records? Why erase her mother?" No answer. Just a look. Somewhere between rage and unraveling. Paloma finally spoke when the judge asked if she knew. "I knew something wasn't right," she said softly. "I asked once why Carmen didn't have any baby pictures. My mom said they were lost in a flood. I wanted to believe her. Then she looked at me. I'm sorry. It didn't fix anything, but it mattered." The verdict came swiftly. Regina was found guilty of custodial interference, identity fraud, and document falsification. All real estate transactions tied to my false identity were nullified. The house, the one I'd built with my bare hands, was frozen pending reassignment, and I was granted legal restoration of my birth name, Catalina Ruiz. As the gavel came down, Regina didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just looked at me like I was the villain, but villains hide the truth. And I had just dragged it into daylight. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Ezra shielded me with his arm, Delilah gripping my hand like a lifeline. I didn't speak to the cameras. I didn't need to. The real story wasn't a headline. It was the paper I held in my hand, signed, stamped, sealed. Proof that I had been rewritten. And now, finally, restored. They didn't go to prison. Not for long anyway. Regina took a plea deal, 6 months in county and a suspended sentence. Community service, fines, restitution. Paloma wasn't charged. She wasn't listed on anything legal, but she disappeared from the media within days. No statements, no defense. She moved 2 states over, changed her last name, started over. I didn't follow. I had enough ghosts. What mattered was that the lie was broken. The identity they stole had been peeled away like old wallpaper, and underneath, I was still here. Delilah moved in with me 3 weeks after the trial ended. Not permanently, just until she found her own place. But for a while we existed in the quiet aftermath together. She cooked like someone trying to make up for time, every meal its own apology. I didn't ask for explanations. I didn't need to. One night, over lemon tamales and 2 sweet coffee, she said, "I used to think finding you would fix everything. But maybe it's just the start." I nodded. She was right. Finding the truth doesn't undo the damage. It just gives it a name. And names have power. I went through the house one last time before the state claimed it. Regina had left it in perfect condition. Cold, spotless, like a hotel no one checked into. In the attic, I found a box labeled Carmen Miscellaneous. Inside were photos I'd never seen. Me, smiling. Me, asleep in front of cartoons. Me, holding Paloma's hand at the zoo. The captions were all wrong. Dates misaligned, locations I'd never been to. But the effort was there. And that's what broke me. Not the deception, the care behind it. They'd built a whole story for me, just to keep the lie breathing. I left the box there. Let the state catalog it with the rest of the evidence. Some fictions deserve to be archived. Ezra offered me a job. Not an investigation. He knew that wasn't my calling. But he had a startup launching to help victims of identity theft rebuild legal standing. He wanted me to run outreach. I said yes. Because who better to guide the erased than someone who clawed her name back from nothing? I changed my legal documents to Catalina Ruiz, my passport, my social. I kept Carmen as a middle name, less out of nostalgia, more as a reminder. A scar you keep visible so you never forget who gave it to you. Delilah opened a second location for Casa Alma near Houston. We co-signed the lease together. The grand opening photo showed the two of us in matching aprons, standing beneath a hand-painted sign that read, "Home isn't given, it's claimed." And maybe that's what all this was really about. Not vengeance, not bitterness, just reclamation. I didn't scream. I didn't destroy them. I simply refused to let the lie win. Some people think revenge has to be loud, dramatic, viral, cinematic. But I disagree. The sharpest revenge is silent. It's the sound of your name, your real name, being spoken out loud in a room that once erased it. It's not fire, it's return. And I returned with proof, with peace, and with nothing left to ask from them again. Sometimes the deepest betrayal isn't loud. It's not a knife in the back. It's a slow erasure. It's being told you're family, while being systematically written out of every room, every document, every future. Catalina's story teaches us that family isn't made through blood or shared roofs. It's made through truth, through choice, and through respect. For years, she gave everything, her youth, her dreams, her labor. In return, she was handed lies dressed up as loyalty. But betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Often, it's the people who smile while rewriting your name. When Catalina learned that her entire identity had been forged, that she was used as a pawn to secure real estate and benefits by the very people she trusted most, she didn't explode. She didn't burn bridges just to make noise. Instead, she studied the patterns. She gathered facts. She built power where none was given. And then she quietly dismantled the lie from the inside. In a world obsessed with viral revenge and emotional outbursts, Catalina's cold, calculated return reminds us that the sharpest justice doesn't shout. It documents. It waits. And when the time is right, it speaks only to those who must hear it. Her story reminds us of the importance of self-ownership, especially in a culture where others will claim your narrative if you don't protect it. So many of us were taught to be grateful, no matter how poorly we were treated. But gratitude without dignity is not virtue. It's self-erasure. And silence, when it comes from fear, is not peace. It's surrender. Catalina didn't seek revenge for the sake of revenge. She reclaimed her name because not reclaiming it would have meant handing her life story to the people who falsified it. She didn't destroy her abusers. She simply refused to let them continue the performance. The real morale? Forgiveness isn't always the final chapter. Sometimes, the most liberating thing you can do is walk away with the truth in your hands and nothing left to prove. Because not all justice needs a courtroom. Some justice looks like a name restored, a business built, a family redefined by choice, not obligation. And sometimes, silence is the sharpest knife. How to get started today. Revisit your personal boundaries, who respects them and who doesn't. Write down your own version of your life story. Who owns it? Really? Start a folder. Your goals, your receipts, your evidence. Reclaim your narrative. Reach out to someone you trust and say, "Can we talk about what I've been holding in?" If Catalina's story moved you, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below. What would you do if you discovered your identity was stolen by family? And don't forget to subscribe, because the most powerful revenge stories are the ones that teach us how to win without screaming.